oh, if you were born with a penis, you're a boy, and if you're born with a vagina, you're a girl, blah, 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 blah. Hello, gorgeous, how are you doing? Welcome back to my channel. It's a chilly day, I'm not gonna lie, it is fresh. January, and it is icy. It's -2 right now, which I know in some parts of the world isn't that cold, but here in South Wales, that's crisp. I'm just saying, that's crisp. A little bit of a rant coming on, I'll be honest. A little bit ranty about other transgender people. Also, Tube Spanner software, a little update, I guess, of what's going on. Yeah, first of all, just to get... So, right, Tube Spanner, if you've signed up, hi, thank you. It's going really well. Crazy busy. Hit the API limit on Google, like, right away. Dope, didn't calculate that one very well, did I? So it turns out my calculation was way off. And I thought, 10,000 API requests a day, that'll be fine. Yeah, I need about 50 million. So, so I've asked for that. So that's happening. Thousands of sign-ups, which is amazing, and all sorts. So that's good. So, and if you want to join Tube Spanner, don't forget there's a link in the description below, and just go and sign up. Join the Tube Spanner group, then you can get into the beta and all sorts. And right now, that's all free. In fact, anyone who helps with testing and all that sort of stuff will be getting an account forever, free. And it's going to be, it's like the premium versions are going to be expensive, hundreds of pounds a month for some of the bigger versions. And I've already got corporations and big companies asking me if there's a corporate license available. So yeah, Tube Spanner going to be huge. Right then, so I have been accused, getting on, changing topic completely, of being transphobic, suffering from internalized transphobia. Yeah. So here's the thing. Turns out, being critical of a transgender person makes me transphobic, it seems. Regardless of how ridiculous somebody is being, and regardless of how much of a, well, frankly, they are being, if they are also transgendered, calling them out for being an asshat is transphobic. I don't agree, by the way, which gets me to the point of what exactly is transphobia. Now, there is a lot wrong, and I've used this term before, the transgender community. I'm not sure that's really actually a thing. I don't think we really have a community. We just have a lot of people who happen to be transgender. It's not like we gather and have secret meetings with a dodgy handshake or anything. However, there are certain divisions amongst transgender people which make us all a little different. So we have things like transsexuals and people with gender dysphoria. We have people who are, traditionally called things like transvestite and crossdresser, also part of the transgender umbrella. So there is all sorts. And what we have is a subset amongst transgender people who try to behave as gatekeepers, who're calling people not really transgender. I suspect that there have been cases. A very recent Canadian comes to mind here that I suspect it may not be transgender and may actually be have an unhealthy interest in youngsters, shall we say. Broadly speaking, you don't really get to tell if somebody is transgender or not. Now, I think there are people who are possibly fake when it comes to gender dysphoria, and there is certainly a difference between wanting to, just have a fetish or fantasize about dressing in clothing of the opposite social gender than you're born. And I think that's not necessarily a medical condition. Gender dysphoria is a medical condition. I think a lot of people will try to say that they're acting out their fetish and claiming it's because of gender dysphoria, and those are not really the same thing, okay? So, back to my point. You have this person who is critiquing, somebody for defining people by their clothing, and then also, literally within half an hour of making that argument and attacking someone for making that argument, they then went on to defend somebody else for being misgendered when they were clearly dressed in the opposite gender. So hypocrisy at its best, okay? I went on to social media and I spoke out about this person to say, stop this bullshit, stop confusing people. This is why it's very hard for cisgender people who don't really understand transgender anyway. When you start being outraged and offended with hypocritical arguments, you're doing nobody any favours. You're just confusing everyone. You're making people who don't understand the situation even more confused. You're making people frightened to talk to us because I might say the wrong thing because I don't understand. And I'm going to get some shit for this. A lot of very loud, outspoken transgender people, and this is true for pretty much any community, care less about the cause they claim to stand for and more about being loud and argumentative and shouty. I said it, and it's a fact, and if you're honest with yourselves, you know that is true. Anywho, I pointed this out online. Oh my god, my Twitter's exploded. Oh, look at this idiot, look at this internalized transphobia. Oh, look at these old people trying to define transgender. Like, really? Well, I've been defining it for quite some time. Thanks, you 14-year-old whippersnapper. So, it's like, wow. So my point kind of is to stop being angry at people. When you're just sitting around on social media being offended by anything that you want to, I will attack. Ah! Wow. And that's one of the big problems we have at the moment is most of us in this not really existing transgender community just want to be left alone and get on with our lives. Being misgendered sometimes sucks, not the end of the world. People using your dead name sometimes sucks, not the end of the world. If it's done accidentally because people have that, that tacit, that muscle memory of referring to you in a certain way, they didn't mean it. They weren't even thinking about your gender when they addressed you. That's how they're used to talking to you. Don't get so crazy about these things, But then we have this very vocal, shouty set of trans activists. And I'm not saying trans activism is bad. I'm quite keen to uphold rights here and freedoms and all sorts. But there's a big difference between being vocal about what is right and attacking people for not really doing anything wrong, for honest mistakes. Anywho, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to get my sweaty on. I shall continue when I get back. I'm back. Yeah. I think one of the problems comes from when people say transgender. That means a huge number of things. And I've seen people who are adamant that they know that transgender means somebody that's had gender reassignment surgery. Or they know transgender means somebody that wears clothes of the opposite gender that they were born with. The reality is, transgender is absolutely an umbrella term, which covers transsexuals. Sun right in my eyes here. This is not helping me at all. That's better. Sun is low and bright today. Then you have, the sort of the cross-dressers, the transvestites. Again, that's a bit of an old-fashioned term. It's only really given a term because it used to mean something to wear clothing of a specified gender which is different to the specified gender that you were born with. It's ridiculous that we have to have terms to wear different types of clothing. That's better. And so, but there's the other problem that we have, is you will often see these, if you were born with a penis, you're a boy, and if you're born with a vagina, you're a girl, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a big problem with that. And the reality is, gender and sex are absolutely not the same thing. You will get people online telling you that, I don't believe any of that science stuff. However, science and medicine, which we broadly speaking accept, says that gender and sex are not the same thing. Deny it by all means, but you're an idiot. Change it with proof? Well, okay. Fair enough, do some scientific research, but just saying you don't agree with that science stuff, you're just probably an idiot. Okay, so the thing with that is, though, when people say you can't change your sex, well, can't you? I mean, and yes, there's DNA, there's chromosomes, there's all sorts of things. Right now, there are certain things we can do and we can't do, but there are things we can do now we couldn't do before. We're having things like, people say, if you can't have a baby, you can't be a girl. Well, lots of people who are genetically born cisgender female also can't have girls, are they? Not female either? You've got to be very careful when you start defining these things. Now, traditionally, in terms of human mammals, we have two biological sexes, male and female. And broadly speaking, that's what science says. Now, we have gender, which is, boy, girl, how you express that, which is to some degree socially constructed, to some other degree inherent and a sense of being. You've got to be very careful when and I've fallen foul of this before. Some elements of gender are socially constructed, like when you go into the toy shop and you see boys' toys and girls' toys, that. But then there are other elements that are just about how you feel, which are different sorts of things. However, yes, so right now the science behind the biology does say boys and girls. I'm going to stop in the shop on the way home. And that there are two. There is some quite good scientific research going on right now, which is possibly making that no longer true. That it's certainly, it's research. There's nothing conclusive yet, but who knows? You know, science says something until it doesn't, that it's proven to mean something else. So we need to be open-minded about all these things, and it is possible that, you know, we were wrong. And here's the other thing. Often we will accept what science says because that's what science says. And the reason it doesn't change is because, well, nobody's really checked lately, because there's been no reason to. And sometimes you go and check things that we've always asserted that were true and think, oh, actually, hang on, since the last time we looked, we found out this new stuff, and actually, this is what it is now. So you gotta be very careful when you start dealing with absolutes and what the world says. But I digress. And so my point kind of comes down to is, you know, stop behaving like you know everything there is to know about being, you know, transgender stuff. Stop trying to gatekeeper it, because transgender means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There are a lot of terms and differences within transgender which you probably don't know. There's this non-binary, and which people used to be called it a tomboy. Call these non-binary stuff people used to say were just tomboys before, or, you know, effeminate, you know, boys. People would think they were gay because they were also a bit effeminate, but not necessarily. These things are far more complex than we think, and the reason society is so hung up on it is society is so used to just dealing with the obviously separation of boys and girls because of the obvious physical differences of, you know, willies and vaginas, but chances are it's a lot more complex than that. So yeah, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on all of this. I'm fairly sure I'll see a few comments telling they absolutely know what the thing is. Bottom line, stop being so nasty and horrible to people. Stop trying to jump on causes when all you really care about is just shouting yourself, and, you know, because you're doing more harm than good. A lot of people like myself are starting to slap that attitude down now because you aren't doing us any favours and you do not speak for us. Thank you for watching. I would love to know what you think. Do you like this sort of rantier approach to my content, by the way? Is this something you're interested in? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more of this stuff, don't forget to subscribe and hit that alarm bell so you'll be notified whenever I put anything out. Thank you so much for watching. If you're here so far, be good to yourselves. Look after yourselves. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask if you speak to people, because you're important. You're very important, and you owe it to yourself to look after yourself. So see you in the very next show. Thank you so much again. Popping up over there is the last show I put out, and below that is the one YouTube thinks you should watch next, but maybe over there, because I can never work out which way I'm going to be pointing. See you next time.